Good morning. This is Carl Dakin, and this is the Successful Funding Show. Welcome to everyone who's in the audience this morning. Thank you for joining us as we're going to talk today about embracing funding sources. So as we get into that in more detail, we're going to look at what an entrepreneur, a small business, a community project, or anyone else who's looking for funding, what can they do that will present themselves in a manner that will give them an opportunity to put on their best face, to make a great first impression, to do other things. And to help me with this discussion this morning on embracing funding sources, my guest is Ron Yeager, who is with me. Good morning, Ron. I can't hear you. Nope. See, when they do a movie, they have the thing afterwards they call outtakes, where they show all these things that went wrong or were kind of humorous. And uh, this is part of doing these kinds of live streaming, is sometimes things don't work the way they're supposed to. But that is, in fact, mirrors reality. So we're quite comfortable working with these kinds of challenges. So while Ron's working on his audio, I'll continue to provide you some background information. I have my own consulting company, Dakin Capital, and through that, I provide services in trying to match people who need money with people who have money. But I'm not a broker, so I'm not simply flipping a deal from one side to the other. I work to determine, what is the best deal, what's missing, how do we make the deal work, all the different things that quite often are missing, that where an entrepreneur or someone has not gotten ready yet to receive capital. So Ron, are you with us yet? Nope, you're still muted out somehow. So the point here is that there are so many things that can be done that sometimes are required before any funding can be had. But even when you do all the minimum things, you still may not stand out. You may not appear to be superior to everyone else who's also looking for money from the same sources. So that's part of what we're going to talk about today, is what else can be done to make yourself look like the shinier object, the more stable, rational investor candidate, project or opportunity. And to have an investor look at you positively and think well of you while you're doing that. So Ron, are you there yet? So while Ron's continuing to work on that, I will just remind everybody that I do put on basically an education program on the topic of identifying high probability investor candidates. And this is a combination of things. You get a workbook, you get an AI avatar who is there to help you answer questions. And I put on a webinar 4 times a year where you can go live with me and other people who are seeking to learn more about this. And the next session will start on April the 2nd. That's a Wednesday, and it'll be 4 one-hour sessions for over 4 weeks. So if you would like to get into that class, you can go to my website at dakincapital.com/events. And as a participant in this live stream show, you're eligible for a discount. And you can get that discount code by going to my newsletter, Instant Funding, which is published on LinkedIn. So now that I'm back, Ron, are you there? No, you've got something's turned off internal your system. So we'll come back to that and look at other things that we can do. And let's see what else. So this is a weekly show called Successful Funding. I bring on guests like Ron who contribute their wisdom when they can get their audio to work. And with that, we talk about different topics on funding. And anyone in the audience is invited to jump in. And we have somebody with us this morning already, Zach Dane. Good morning, Zach. Good to hear from you. And looking forward to talking to you more about your current project, which has to do with establishing fractional ownership of real estate that both enhances and enables the people to invest who otherwise might not have an opportunity. So this can involve crowdfunding and other types of security sales. And at the same time, it can bring more equity capital into a deal, which may make it easier to obtain debt financing on the backside. And most importantly is Zach is working on a back office or a platform that will allow for the easier transfer of ownership from one person to another. This is called the secondary market, and it enables greater liquidity in the ownership of these real estate interests. And so this is a trend that everybody expects to grow and become the next new thing, because we now have mechanisms where both everyone can invest through crowdfunding, but at the same time, we have the technology now to allow us to break down ownership of any particular thing, whether it's land or any other asset. And with that, then we can allow more people to participate. So it helps the democratic process for the capital industry, and we can go there. So checking in again, Ron, we're going to do this just like a newscast where I'm standing by waiting for our field reporter to check in. And he's still not there. So a lot of you may have money in the stock market. In fact, it's something that I talk about from time to time that, yeah, I'll just turn Ron off there for a moment until he comes back. But the market's down right now. And I've got to tell you that this is not unanticipated. I thought that we were going to see what's called a market correction take place many months. I've still been concerned that the way our economy has been bolstered or bloated, depends on how you want to describe it, by the federal government, that sooner or later the wheels were going to come off the wagon and we might see a serious recession in our economy. And the consequence of that is that right now, with all the things that the Trump administration is doing, it has raised uncertainty, unpredictability, inability to make future forecasts in the short term to a very high level. No one really understands what's going on. All kinds of organizations are trying to tell you what they think is going on, but there's really no way that they can tell you anything. And so you're having to place your bets on your different investments in a way that is pretty much like driving blindfolded. It's dangerous and it's difficult to come up with any plan of action. What we have seen investors doing is that they have done one of two things. They have moved to the sidelines, which means they've quit making investments and they're going to take a pause in making investment decisions until a period of time when they think that the market has stabilized again and they are now again able to make some reasonable forecast as what's going to happen in the future. And this is referred to in the capital industry as keeping your powder dry, or other phrases, which mean simply that their money's inactive, it's not working. And this is something that angel investors, wealthy individuals can do because the discretion to invest or not invest is solely, their own. They don't have to report to anybody. They're not under a management contract to put money to work for the benefit of their investors. Now, if we switch to a family office, they have a little bit more motivation because they have money under management. And if it's under independent management, not the family members, they will be needing to make investments because they can't let the money sit idle. And then we have the private equity firms, the funds, other groups of that nature. These are paid money managers. These are the professionals who have to put the money to work. And so they will be looking at deals, but they will do it oh so much carefully than they might have done 2 or 3 years ago. And at the same time, we've seen these types of investments also pause or have to notch up the conservative approach or criteria for investing because there's a lot of money that's been invested in projects where they cannot get the money out without realizing a loss. So the result of that is they're going to try to put off that loss, hope that the investment recovers and they can bring the investment in at a later time that's still going to make them some money for their investors. But there's no assurance of that. And when that's going to happen is not known. And because they cannot cash out of the investments they're in, that money cannot be rolled over and reinvested into new projects. And the net result of that is that they simply are not participating in the market to the same extent. And this is across the board. So if you look at any segment of the capital industry, all investments are down. Even crowdfunding was down almost 26% in February over the month of March. And these are all indications that people are nervous about making investments and they want to be more careful in their selection. And if they don't have to make an investment today, maybe they should wait a while and go that route. Now, Ron, we have audio yet?
I hope I'm here.
Yay, very good.
Yeah. Apologies. I just got my laptop out of service yesterday and I turned it on this morning for the first time. But I'm here. I switched devices.
So one last comment before we jump into this, but when things are getting weird in the capital market, what you sometimes will see is that those investors who need to make investments, who don't have the ability to sit idle for a while, they start looking at what I call longer term investments, where before they might have been looking at 1 to 3 years, now they may be looking at 3 to 5 years. I call this building the bridge over the chaos, where they're looking for something that looks stable, looks real, looks like it's not going to be impacted by anything weird or odd going on now, with a exit from that investment 5 years down the road, or maybe even longer, depending upon how unstable they think things may be. And by doing that, they're saying we can't do any short-term stuff because it's too volatile. We can't predict where the short-term is going to go. But if I put money into a housing project that should peak in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, that makes more sense. That the housing needs will still be there. There'll still be people who want to buy houses. And so they may consider that a good long-term investment. You may see other types of investments which appear more stable. And at the same time, you'll see bizarre claims of put all your money in diamonds or put all your money in gold, and that as another way of what they call a hedge against chaos. But I have not found that to be anything more than good sales pitches by people trying to move product. But some people still like to keep a little bit of those types of commodities in their investment portfolio, and that's their decision, because we do not make advice on this program on investments. That's not what we're here for. So Ron, I'm glad you're with us now, and part of what I've been doing this year is I've been starting to provide services which I call investor facing. I'm trying to help people who have money, who want to invest today, who feel a need to invest today, despite everything else going on in the marketplace, to do a better job of placing their investments or finding their investments. And the greatest challenge that we've been talking about on this show, off and on this year, is that so many opportunities really are not ready for investment. They simply they don't have their books and records together. They haven't figured out their sales and distribution. They make claims of future sales which make no sense, where they'll tell you that, oh, with the same sales force of 2 people, we're going to sell 5,000 customers over the next 2 or 3 years. And since that amounts to about closing 10 deals a day, that doesn't make sense. So we have that problem, and there are multiple things that can be done to try to help an enterprise get ready to receive capital. But if we assume that this business really is ready to go out and pitch for money, now we're talking about, well, how do we get the attention of the investor candidate? How do we make ourselves better, look smarter, faster, whatever the right adjective may be, to get out there and get ahead of everybody else who's now looking for the same money? Because think about it. Now, if all the markets are off 10, 20, 30 or more percent, same amount of people looking for money from a smaller group of people. So if we were talking about high school sports and then saying we need to elevate ourselves to college, now we're talking pro Olympic level. What would you do, Ron, to make yourself the most visible, viable, attractive candidate for funding today?
Well, I would say, Carl, that the investors and the entrepreneurs looking for investors, I believe, and through my experience, they often speak different languages. Okay. So, like investors will be focused on ROI, risk mitigation, scalability, and the entrepreneurs are focused on their vision, their product or service, and the market fit. So, I would change the messaging as an entrepreneur, especially as you alluded to. There's the market right now, as you were led with or talked about. I mean, there are many factors that affect the market, right? Such as market sentiment, regulatory policy changes, macroeconomic factors, and this is why investors have concerns about market uncertainty. So, I would really look at creating a shared language, or changing the way I speak and appeal to those potential investors. And so I know investors will talk about milestones, they'll talk about KPIs, and then business entrepreneurs, whatever they're talking about, growth metrics and other such things. So I would bring those languages together somehow, and I think it's a unique case. If you're a startup entrepreneur and you're almost near profitability, you're going to talk to a certain class of, private equity people or investors. So that's my first stab at this one. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Ron's point here is one that is good from the standpoint of languaging, but it's also understanding what the heck is the investor looking for. The investor doesn't particularly care that this pen is made with a wooden core or it's got plastic or anything else in it. They want to know if you can sell it. because the sale creates revenue, which creates income, which pays back the investor. And this is a common failing of businesses, and one where I still do battle, where they'll put together an offering, and I go, where does the investor exit the investment? And they go, oh, we're going to do something down the road. And I'm like, yeah, but you're trying to get the investor to write you a check today, and they kind of want to know when they get their money back. And if you don't tell them that up front, they think one of two things. One, you have no idea when they're going to get their money back, which is a real easy way to kill an interest in a deal, or you don't have enough understanding of your business, or even worse, you don't think you care if they get their money back. All you care about is getting their money in the. There's so many negatives that come out of that. And I keep telling people, I said, where in your pitch deck, where in your offering documents do you say, if you put money in today, the following events may occur in the future, which we're working towards, which will create an event where you can get your money back. Now, it may be something like a merger or acquisition by another company, and where the equity markets are down, M&A is up, which is also a sign that the capital markets are not working right now the way they should. But if you don't have a buyer lined up, then it's like telling people, well, I've got a great new widget and customers are going to fall over themselves to buy this. Well, it's the same story when you say, hey, I'm raising money today, but 5 years down the road, somebody's going to show up miraculously and buy the company. So
Right.
if you're thinking through this from the perspective of the investor, they want to know about the exit. They want to know how they get their money back. They want to know what you're doing today to prepare for that situation so that it can happen in the future and it isn't just going to be a serendipitous event, if at all.
Right.
So outcomes, paybacks, ROIs, other benefits, these are all outcomes of a successful business. And you should be able to talk to the investor in their own words about what that means to the investor.
Yes, very good point. And that was, you're kind of segueing into my next point, Carl. And I'm really good at this. I'm just going to say this, but I'll put that down there. But I think that I know that the entrepreneur needs to facilitate a more organic interaction. Okay. For instance, I'm going to be involved with Boulder Startup Week this summer. I'm involved with Clean Tech Open this year as a mentor for two different startup companies, and those networking events are formal. There's pitch days involved. It's a very structured environment, and it feels very transactional. It's not organic. So what I do, I create more relaxed settings, like dinners. I'll take someone to dinner or meet for a coffee or drink. Little roundtable type discussions if you get similar people together, which has happened to me frequently, and things like that. And I think this helps both sides to connect as people, not just business roles. And once everyone gets to know everyone on the people basis, that's good. And then I also believe that entrepreneurs, just for whatever reason, maybe it's self-imposed pressure, but they always seem to overhype things. And they should. That's their vision, right? But investors, when that happens, and it's obvious, you can see it happening, investors feel that they're not getting the full story. So you need a different type of transparency as well. Talking about deal structures, the risks, the challenges. You're right. The investor will want to know everything, except who the mysterious person is 5 years from now that is going to purchase this amazing company. Because entrepreneurs and investors should openly discuss like gaps where each side feels there's a gap. On the entrepreneur side, the gap is always, I don't have the funding right now, or I need the funding. On the investor side, there's other gaps, and then are there solid plans to address those gaps? If not, if it's just a hope and a wing and a prayer, it's not an investable company.
Yeah, Eric Hansen was my guest last week, and this was one of his points that in making a pitch, you're supposed to disclose all the risk that may face your particular enterprise that may prevent you from reaching all of your goals. And this is commonly put in a prospectus or offering memorandum as a statement of risk or risk factors. And commonly, entrepreneurs will list all these risks, which they may or may not understand, which, like me, they may have copied from somebody else's risk statement. But they very rarely will then put with that, this is how we're countering this risk. This is what we're doing to mitigate this risk. There's no counterpoint taking place within the risk statement where you say, hey, we have an entrepreneur who's a world genius on this topic, and if he dies, this company could go broke. And you're like, well, that's an accurate statement of the risk, but what are you doing about it? And my common practice is whenever I encounter one of these geniuses, is I say, if you want the money, then you have to hire someone who's a young, brilliant, student or grad student or just recent graduate, and you have to clone everything you know into them as soon as possible. Because if you get hit by a bus, and I say that carefully because I am currently dealing with a situation where a principal died, and I've been there a number of times through my career. And when they have no good number two, no second, no person to step into their shoes, it's devastating to the company. It often will cause the whole thing to crash and burn. And investors have no interest in making placing all their bets on red 40 on the roulette wheel. They're going, if you've got a genius entrepreneur here, then what are you doing to protect yourself? For that line. And this is, and then in other things like, well, what if a wildfire burns down my building? Well, do you have insurance? There's things you can do to control the risk to some degree. Some things you can't do much about. The hurricane hits North Carolina, it floods 15 feet into your house. Yeah, there's nothing you can do to stop that. But do you have backups? Do you have offsite data storage? Do you have flood insurance? You could walk through the list and say, I, as a custodian of the investor's money, I take this job seriously, and I've taken the following steps to try to protect against those things that I can anticipate might happen, and I spend an appropriate amount of money on each of those. So those are all on the risk management side. But then we're back into the business side of this, which is, this is a business. We have to create an exit for our investors. It's not like they're going to get on the merry-go-round forever, and just continue to cycle through this. But so many investors get trapped into deals, which is where a lot of the private equity money is being tied up today. And it isn't like these were necessarily bad investments, but markets changed. COVID happened. Other things happened. Currently today, you might have put all your money into importing a product out of a country where there's a brand new tariff that is going to price you out of the marketplace. So these are all different things to take into consideration. And so when you're talking with the investor, first, as Ron's pointed out, talk their language. But Ron's pointed out something I think that is even more important, which is number one on my top 3 list, which is trust between the entrepreneur and the investor. Before I ask Ron to dive into that more, I want to say hello to Saad. Thank you for tuning in this morning, and also want to say hello to Wilfred for signing in. Thanks for listening. And if you guys have some questions, Ron, as he pointed out, he is a genius in establishing rapport and relationships with people. That's the reason why I like to hang out with Ron because I don't have that skill set. And go from there. But as Ron was stating, entrepreneurs too often, say, I need money, and they like pop up their head out of a hole like a gopher and say, look at me, I need money. But 5 minutes ago, you couldn't see them, you didn't know they existed. And they kind of seem to think that somehow their opportunity, who they are, whatever, will create instantaneous trust to a level that a person will invest in them. That's simply not the case. So there are a variety of ways to make yourself visible over time, to create your own repertoire of who you are and what you're doing. And Ron, what would be some things that you would suggest that entrepreneurs do to make themselves stand up, well-known asset in their communities?
Good question. But first, I don't think I said the word genius in describing myself. I think I said expert. You said, okay, that's fair. There's a few things. I was talking about warm introductions, things like that. But an entrepreneur should provide some sort of value before seeking the capital. So you said it to me in a past conversation, Carl, about a dance, high school dance, let's say, or the men are on one side, women on the other side. How do you close that gap, right? So you do that, I think, by turning that dance into a conversation, and less posturing, more problem solving. And so if you're an entrepreneur and you provide value before you really get into the capital piece, you could do that by providing small proof points, where you can show them, hey, this is my early user growth, or this is my early revenue, even if it's not the ongoing regular revenue for what the company is supposed to be, but maybe along the way. If you are a consulting company and then you're technology consulting and you're building some sort of platform, well, along the way, you can certainly use your consulting skills to raise some revenue that feeds the engine that is the entrepreneurial pursuit, And so there are very good ways of doing that before formally raising funds. And then investors, in my opinion, when they see that, they'll offer, strategic advice. They'll offer introductions. They'll say, okay, this is almost there for me, but I have a friend in my network that this would be perfect for. So it's the communication. It's not the posturing, it's the communication. And by not overhyping things and just communicating, you're increasing warm introductions, excuse me. And then there's always misaligned incentives on each side, okay? And that creates distance. So investors want quick exits, founders want a legacy that changes the world. They want to keep going forever. So all those things have to match. It's all part of the dance on the dance floor, and how do you shrink that dance floor? But I would just offer small proof points to answer your question and where you're going. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just means you're talking to the wrong group of people. That's my opinion.
Right. Yeah, no, this has been one of my primary things, the motivated money theme that I practice, the identification of investor candidates, which I do through my education program. It has to do with matching your opportunity with the right investor. And you may have something that anyone could invest in, but that just makes you a commodity along with any other investment that's out there. There's tens of thousands of people, other entrepreneurs, other things competing for money just from the business side. And when you're talking to an individual, you're also going to find their personal budget, their spouse, their kids, whatever, also competing for money. And I don't know how many times I've talked to somebody who's going, yeah, but I'm putting that money aside for my kids' college. I'm not going to touch that. So there's another competitor that you've got to think about this in those terms. So when we get to that, what I like to do is I like to establish a relationship with as many people as early as possible. And this is a long-term investment in yourself and any business that you're going to be leading, so that you have a brand, personal brand, that is independent and aside from the business you're operating. And I was working with an associate of mine earlier this week. I was submitting a nomination for her to be considered for an award for women business owners. And the questions were, what have you done in your field? So she had all of these accomplishments, awards, and so forth. And then what have you done in your community? And both of these questions have really nothing to do with her business, in the sense that these are about her. This is her personal brand. This is what she has accomplished, whether she's working for business A or business B, or she's working through a series of businesses in her career. Too often, entrepreneurs submerge their identity into the business, to the point that if the business, when it's sold or it fails, whatever happens to occur there, their identity is still zero, because there was no personal identity. There was, no one there. Where if they've been writing papers, if they've been speaking, if they've been volunteering in their community, they have this other life, this way of demonstrating who they are, how they care, what they care about, which is viewed and interpreted by the investor candidate almost as much or more than the business itself. And people just have a tendency to overlook that. So we talk a lot about balance in life between the entrepreneur, your home personal life and your business life. But there you need your own brand, your personal brand, and you need to be putting it out there all the time, like Ron's doing. He's doing some work with a couple groups in Colorado. I was out at an economic development forum in Craig, Colorado last Wednesday. And, one of the jokes is, I will see somebody, I saw somebody from the University, Colorado State University, and they go, there's Carl again. I'm a presence, an expected, component, because I'm working on issues that affect rural communities. In this case, we're looking at housing and smart cities and so on. And they know that this is a concern of mine, because I've made it known to everybody that I care about this and I'm trying to do something about it. So if I then pitch a business that has something to do with housing or rural communities or whatever, people go, yeah, that's Carl. He's working on this. He's still working on this. And I get credibility for that. That counts in the totality of my pitch. Because they're going, this is not somebody who's, grass is greener, flash in the pan, trying to make a quick buck kind of thing. It's not like flipping a house where you're here today and gone tomorrow. These are all things that may make money, but they're of concern to the investor candidate, because they think that they're making money, you're making money ahead of their interest. And that's a concern for them.
Yep. So, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And Carl is out there everywhere I look. I see this guy, and that's a good thing, And then when he's not there, and if the conversation turns about network or whatever, it seems like everyone knows Carl. So that's a good thing as well. But that is cultivating, curating your own brand, and then putting it out there. So. Yeah, one of the things I want to add to this conversation is that you have investors, you have entrepreneurs. So then, how do you close the deal? Okay, how do you consummate this? And the way that works for me, I get all my ducks in a row, and then I create a sense of urgency without any type of pressure. Okay, and it sounds like that doesn't make any sense, but I'll create a sense of urgency by talking about, as an entrepreneur, I'll talk about competitor moves, market opportunity, things like that. and that will resonate with the investor group. And then also to build trust through small wins, and they can be milestones and things like that. But once you do that, you have these small wins. That is something that is tangible, and you can offer that. The third thing, remove objections early. So I would seek, what is your biggest concern? And I never have automatic rehearsed answers for those questions, for those difficult, tough questions, but I will entertain them and tackle them head on, because that is a concern. And some questions have nothing to do with my business, but I will answer the question, and when you do that, you take it away from the other person. You answer, it's resolved, you move on. That's it. Okay. And then I also, investors like to, what they want to control everything, valuation, timing, strategic vision, and control. As an entrepreneur, the strategic vision and control should remain in your world. Investors, entrepreneurs can be flexible on valuation or timing, but not on the core strategic vision and control of the company. And if you find a good investor, they're going to offer creative solutions, and they'll want to get to the finish line or the starting line with you. And then the final thing I'll talk about is just the fear of missing out, FOMO effect. Entrepreneurs should signal, truthfully say, that I have interest from other investors or partners. And if you can gin that up, and that's true, I think you should say that, because it's the reality of the situation. And investors, if they're really good, they'll position themselves as capital.
You cut out there, Ron. Could you repeat that?
Yes. Investors, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I said investors should position themselves as adding some sort of value beyond capital. That's a good investor. I mean, if investor gives you capital, but and they add some value to it, like opening up their network or doing other things that are value added and to your core mission as the entrepreneur, that's awesome. If they want to come in and micromanage what you're doing, that's not good, and that should have been discovered long before they became an investor.
Yeah, so there's so many good points that you're making there. Probably talk about any one of them for an hour by itself.
True.
That you're establishing a rapport with this person, and they have to trust you, they have to have money ready to invest, and they have to like you more than anything else that's out there. That sometimes is very difficult to do, and it's even more difficult to do it in a hurry. So this is part of the reason for developing a personal brand, developing relationships over time. But I've seen entrepreneurs make that last point that you make about, I've got other people looking at this deal. You want to create the urgency. I totally agree with that. But too often I've seen entrepreneurs do it poorly, where they'll go, well, you don't want to miss out on this deal. Well, that kind of statement comes across wrong for so many different reasons, because this investor already has money. They do not need this deal. So if you're trying to make it a scarcity thing from the standpoint of the investor, it's not. They've got all kinds of other things to invest in. But more often it comes across arrogantly. It's like, yes, I'm king of the world. I'm the greatest thing that ever happened. My technology is better than sliced bread, and you need to invest in me. And any hint at arrogance, anything that is condescending or negative towards the investor candidate, they'll pick up on that, and they will typically walk away. Now, there's a small fraction of investors who may get their ego up and try to prove, how big they are by how big of a check they can write. But that's more of a myth. That's more of a TV show, reality show than it is reality.
Hmm.
But Ron's correct. If you talk about third-party things like, hey, we're looking for the funding because we have an opportunity to buy this business or get this factory or do something. These are legitimate reasons for urgency because they're opportunities that advance the business in which the investor will participate. If you have 20 other guys who are getting ready to line up checks, you can talk about that. Again, I'm very careful on how I present that because I'm not trying to use a slick salesman technique. I'm simply advising them. Yeah, we're, right now, based on where things are at, I think we're going to get our money in within the next 30, 60 days. I've got 5 guys that are serious. Some, are big enough to take out the whole thing or not. They're all small, still looking. I mean, even telling them the negative information at this point, with other people looking at the deal, creates credibility for you because other people are looking at the deal. It's not
True.
like this investor is the one and only. And,
right. And to that, Carl, if I may interrupt and add, is that on that exact point there, you can say that, yeah, I have 5 other sources to fund this, but I believe that you're the best fit for these following reasons. Boom, boom, boom. And that's an honest statement. I mean, investors can pick up the bullshit really quickly. And so you don't want to be insultatory towards them because they'll say, "Oh, you're insulting me," But if you present it in the right way, say, "Hey, I have 5 other sources looking at this, but these are the 3 things or 2 things that you bring to this relationship that I think will make it really successful." So you can be honest, but then you can also pay a genuine compliment and a reason that why there's a good strategic fit here. Yes.
Right. Totally. I mean, one of the things, again, that entrepreneurs do not do is too often they start a conversation with an investor candidate and they know nothing about them. Now, that can happen at a pitch session where you get introduced or somebody drags you across a restaurant and says, "I want you to meet this person." And in that case, it's perfectly okay not to know the person you're talking to or their background or why they're there. But if you are initiating this contact, there is absolutely no excuse why you don't know them. I mean, you can pop them up on LinkedIn. You can do a Google search on them. You can do a variety of things to find out who they are, what they're doing, where they're at. And you should be thinking through, as Ron described it, why would it be good to work with this person? What benefit would they bring beyond their money to your company? And you should be prepared to talk about that in a way that's not about you, it's about them. So I like to start off a conversation with, I see you're doing this. I have something I think might be of benefit to you, and start with as a pay it forward almost kind of a thing. Where I'll say, I've been thinking about this, and this is what I think are the solutions on the table. I may be one of the ones that you may want to consider. Well, at that point, I'm not pitching him for money yet. If he says, "Well, when can we start?" I go, "I've got to raise some money first." Now I'm going to throw that on the table. But if I start with I'm looking for an investor, that's like turning a switch off. I need money. Well, that's a double switch off because now you're saying you're looking for an investor and you've been incompetent to this point in raising funding. So now you're getting desperate. There's all kinds of ways to communicate this once you're ready. And as Ron says, once you have your ducks in a row, we're talking about having everything done that you should have done. All your documents, all your books and records, everything's there. You've got demonstrations. I sat through 3 conversations in the last 3 days where a guy's telling me how wonderful their technology is. And my question is, where can I see it work? Which is a logical first question. And in each case, I got an answer that was vague at best. Well, we can't do it right now, or our demo is down, or something else. And these are not words any investor ever wants to hear, because they're like, well, if all you're doing is raising money right now, then you should have a demo to help me understand what you're doing and convince me that this is a good deal. And you're telling me you don't have it. So that means you're not ready to raise money. And I'll just bluntly put it out there. If you don't have a demo, and even if it's a simulation or a walkthrough or a process chart, if you're in the early product design phase and you're still not at a point of having a viable prototype or first product, you've got to be able to explain where you're at then in your product development life cycle. You have to explain what you have to do next. You have to demonstrate you're in control of the situation, and the only thing that's missing is the money necessary to go to the next step. But you should have some answers for how you're going to get that. Some may be slower, like I'm going to apply for a federal grant, or I'm in negotiation with a potential customer to provide this money to do this. If you don't have a good answer for that, the people are going like, what are you doing here? I mean, seriously.
Right.
You tell me you need money. You can't tell me when you're going to be done. You can't tell me when I get my money back, all these other things. So today we're trying to focus more on people who are already ready. They've got products, demos, they've got information, they understand who they're talking to, and we're reaching out to them, and we're trying basically to say, hi, I'm here. Hi, I see you. I think we make sense to work together, and I'm presenting this in a professional, authentic, sincere fashion that will elevate me amongst the other 1,000 people banging on them for money. And this is going to be an ongoing topic on this show, because this seems to be a point where too many entrepreneurs, they're telling the wrong information. They don't have the information. And it isn't like they couldn't do it correctly, meaning that they are ready to go to market. They are ready to pitch. They're just presenting themselves wrong. They're coming across to the investor as too needy, too desperate, too self-centered, too arrogant, or confused about the true potential of their opportunity.
Right. Yeah. These relationships, Carl, and my final thought maybe is that it's these relationships in closing. It's not about convincing the other person. It's about making both sides feel like they're winning. And if you can align value, timing, trust, the close should. The relationship and the closing and the ongoing piece should feel very natural. It shouldn't be something you have to second guess ever, and that's the ultimate that's the ultimate point to be at. If you can be at that, then you'll have a good relationship while while the business is ongoing and growing, I think.
Right, and from that standpoint, again, too often the pitch is made of, give me your money, disappear. I've got your money, go away. I don't want to hear from you again. Or I'm going to make you rich, so give me your money today and I'll call you in 5 years and tell you how much money you made. That simply does not work. And anything that you see on TV, you see at a pitch competition where it looks like somebody had an epiphany and they started throwing money at the entrepreneur. This is all, it's phony, and it's often contrived. And even I think I've been invited to 20 capital conferences so far this year. We're going to have all the investors in the room. And I'm like, well, you don't know who I am. You don't know my opportunity. You have no idea whether any of the people that you've invited are going to match up with me. And oh, by the way, you can't guarantee me they're going to be there. So if you're shelling out big bucks to go down to South by Southwest, convinced that somewhere in that audience, there's a white knight carrying a bucket of money with him that's going to throw it on you as soon as you demonstrate you're an entrepreneur, you need to take a time out and rethink who you are. because if you walk in with that expectation, your first words out of your mouth are going to be off target.
True.
You don't know who they are. You don't know why they care. You don't know if they match. You don't know how to talk to them about what's good for them, and
Right.
you can't create any of these other elements that go into that first encounter. And the other thing is that if you think you're going to get a check the first day, then you're dealing in a different world than the one I live in, because you have to build that relationship. And I usually, if I'm starting from scratch, allow up to 6 months to get to a point where I feel that I know them, they know me, and I am interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me, maybe more so.
Absolutely.
Because I want a good relationship, as Ron's described it. You're going to link arms and go merrily off to the Wizard of Oz together. You are not saying, "Give me the money and I'll see you later." That's not the way this works.
Right. That's true. Yeah. And those reality TV shows I think that you're referring to, Carl, they're well produced, and I know as an entrepreneur and as an investor, nothing is produced. There's no production assistant. There's nothing like that. It's reality. And so, no matter what you hear as an entrepreneur, I'll work that side of it. No matter what you hear, you should never have like these roller coaster reactions, like deep high emotions and what have you. It's you hear it, you can digest it. If the other if the other side of it, the investors keep bringing that up, then there's probably good reason to give it some concern. But if it's something bizarre that you hear, just say, okay, let me think about that. Give me some time, give me a day, what have you. But it really is not. Again, it's not about convincing the other party to the party. It's about the trust, the everything that you need just in any relationship that's going to be successful. It's a it's a tacit understanding. That this is it, and that's not to say things won't change, but to start it off and to begin the journey, what you're dealing with. That I often want to do well. I can rent a sailboat in Miami, a bareboat charter, 30-foot, 35-foot boat, and I can sail it myself to British Virgin Islands, well, 90 miles away, right? But before that boat leaves, even if I'm a captain and I know what I'm doing, I'm going to make sure that everything is on that boat that I need, including a whistle, the fire extinguisher. Everything needs to be on that boat. Provisions, food, everything. So when you start that journey, if you do have exceptions, you can deal with it. Like, you're not going to sail in bad weather, but you'll have the navigational aids to know that, okay, a storm's approaching. This is what I need to do to pivot and go around that, or turn around and go back a little bit and wait. But that's the same with an entrepreneur. Same thing. If you're missing some things on your boat, that might be okay, but it's going to increase your probability that if something comes up and disrupts you, you won't have plan B. There's no way to deal with this. And that's not where you want to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. I could rent that same boat, but I don't have a captain's license. And so I would have to hire a captain. And then if I'm concerned the captain might have an accident, then maybe I need a second mate also.
That's right.
Board,
That's right.
as my fallback. And even then, as Ron points out, I would want every form of radio communication. I would want secondary lines of communication, different things going on. So this is what we're talking about, is that when you start talking to an investor, and I'm going to sum up, is that you can't expect them to make a major detour. You can't expect them to do something radically different from what they're already doing. You're more trying to align what you're doing with what they're already doing, with their existing interest, with what they care about, and even their investing style and criteria. And if it turns out that they have totally different interests, then why are you talking to them? And if you didn't know they have totally different interests, then the question is, why didn't you find that out before you had the conversation?
Right.
But if you are ready to pitch, then everything you're doing is kind of an interview process on both sides to say, do I align with their interest in what they're doing? If so, then there's a reason for a conversation. It may not lead to an investment. It should not start off with an investment pitch. You're more asking the question, well, I understand you're interested in workforce housing, so am I. Are you interested in workforce housing rural community? Because I am. Oh, you're urban, then maybe we don't have that much interest. Oh, but you are interested in solar power for your workforce housing, so we have that. And you find out where this commonality exists. And this helps build the relationship, help build the trust, and demonstrate your knowledge and care and concern about what you're pitching. And if the guy on the other side doesn't care about any of those things, you're not going to get the investment anyway. So move on.
Right.
You don't have time to talk to everybody in the world. Although Ron and I try to talk to almost everybody in the world.
Yeah, we do.
So any last thoughts, Ron, to close up for today?
No, thanks for having me on your show. And, I look forward to these ongoing discussions. I think today was pretty good. We covered a lot of ground, and we shrunk the dance floor and brought both sides closer, hopefully. That's it.
Yeah, I last week talked about the entrepreneur approach. If the glass is not half full or half empty, you need to change the size of the cup or the glass. But it's hard to do that with a dance floor, to get both walls to come in, and force the people to come together in the middle. That's part of the reality. Is you have to find that common person. You have to talk to them in a way that is respectful and professional. And then you have to be able to put yourself out there in a way that communicates all these things to them. But if you do that, that will elevate you above most everybody else who's out pitching for money, who's been watching too much TV, who's talking too much about themselves or about their technology, failing to talk about the outcomes, failing to talk about the exit, failing to talk about why this is good for the investor. Those things will all lose points. And this is a game where you can't really afford to lose any points.
That's true.
Okay, well, we'll see everybody next week on the Successful Funding Show. We're going to continue along this line of conversations with experts or geniuses, depends on how you want to refer to Ron, who have a great talent for connecting with people and talking with them and building these relationships, because this is the jumping off point. Once you're ready to receive capital, then you need to go out and find it. But it's a process you should have started 10 years ago through some of these other activities. And if you don't have a time machine to go backwards, then you have to figure out how to make up time and improve your posture and your position when you talk to people. And we'll talk more about that. So thanks, Ron, for being here today. To the audience for viewing today. We'll be back next week. Take care.